Hello and welcome back to DevRel Radio, the podcast where we tune into the heart of developer relations. And I'm your host, Ollie, and I'm here today with my co hosts, Victor
Hello, everyone. It's great to be back.
and Baro.
Hey, I hope you're doing good. We have a very excited guest today and very excited and controversial topic.
And today we're happy to have Katie Miller to talk about developer marketing and the intersection of developer marketing and developer relations. Hey, Katie.
Hello! I am so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, in one of our previous episodes, we touched a little bit on how marketing to developers is different from marketing to general public, and I would like to have insights from Katie because she's very knowledgeable and very experienced in that area. But I would like to start with a little intro of your career path and how did you end up with developer relations and developer marketing in general.
I love this question. And it's so funny because when I look back, it seems inevitable based on the things that I enjoy doing and the things that I'm passionate about. And yet, at the same time, when you actually piece it together chronologically moving forward, it seems highly unusual. My first job after university, I ran the admissions office at a dental school. And so you're probably sitting there thinking, what is the relationship between developer relations and deciding that you want to spend $250,000 to get an education at a particular dental school? And the through line for that really is getting people information that they need to make good decisions. I know that doesn't sound very lofty or marketing-y necessarily, but it's really the core of what drives me. Yes, I want as many people as possible to be really excited to come to dental school A versus dental school B, or to be really excited to use API A versus API B. And at the same time, it's ultimately comes down to what is somebody trying to achieve? What is the problem that they're faced with? And how do I, even if I'm trying to lean them towards A versus B, also make sure that they have the full set of information at their fingertips so that they understand how option A could potentially solve their problems and if it's the solution that they're looking for in the moment. But the path wasn't necessarily as direct as that. What actually brought me out to Silicon Valley and inevitably led me into tech was I thought my career would stay in higher education. And so I came west to get my graduate degree. I had moved from very cold and snowy Boston and landed in very sunny and warm California and decided maybe I would make a go of it out here, that it actually is lovely in the middle of January. And I needed a job. And a friend said, what about Google? I was so naive. And this was back in 2005. I was so naive that I was like, I just got a degree in education. What am I going to do for a tech company? I'm not an engineer by training. She's like, they hire people other than engineers. So she put me through the interview process. I went through the interview process, and lo and behold, ended up restarting my career as an AdWords associate, which essentially meant that I spent the first year or so of my time at Google answering emails and phone calls from long tail advertisers who were trying to figure out what was this whole new world of digital search advertising. And the rest is really history. The thing that I was really struck with in those early days at Google that kind of is the full loop back to why developer relations was inevitable is the way that they trained us to interact with advertisers wasn't pushing to upsell them or sell them. It was really showing how we had a way to solve their problems. And that was how we interacted with them via email and via phone and via chat. How we engaged with them at events is we saw that there was a way for them to reach more people and to do it in a measurable way. That whole idea of, we know half of our advertising works, we're just not sure which half, is we wanted to make it so that they knew which part worked. And I thought that was amazing, and that we were talking from a place of authenticity and transparency. So after spending a good chunk of time on the ad tech side of things, including being the product marketing lead for the ads APIs. I got the 7-year itch and an opportunity was open to work on the developer marketing team, which was the core team for Google I/O. And from there, and I know that you kind of hinted at this in our prep of that whole idea of welcome to developer marketing. You can't market to developers. I was like, ooh.
What year it was?
Oh, this was 2012.
So you're like, because Google I/O as a conference already kind of like doesn't really, it's not developer conference anymore, right? So it used to be a lot of things
Yeah.
about the
It
platform.
was long time ago. Yeah. So and here we're getting to the punchline of our heated discussion that hopefully will emerge. One of the books, one of the classic books about developer relations, actually called "Developer Marketing Does Not Exist." Here's the idea. One of the things that we spoke about and we speak about a lot in developer relations is how developers hate to be marketed to. Right. And how generally developer relations is not the same as developer marketing, and how we don't want to be seen as marketeers. And it's a bad word. Marketing is a bad word when it comes to developers and software engineers. What do you say about that?
I would say bad marketing is bad marketing. And I can see why for a really long time, if B2B or business to consumer marketing tactics, even enterprise marketing tactics, if they were used to market to developers, that would be a really bad experience. And I push a little bit though on that notion that they can't be marketed to. And the reason is if you go back to, not you necessarily, but if we go back to core principles of marketing, and I actually take this away from Google's CMO, who many years ago, Lorraine Toohill, many years ago, she said she really drove us to know the user, know the magic, and connect the two. And that's really the foundational principle from which I operate. And I think what was missing in those bad experiences was knowing the user, that the developer is a unique audience. It isn't B2B, which when I first started in developer marketing, I was like, I just spent 7 years doing B2B marketing. I can figure this out. And recognizing that it is a unique audience that has unique problems, unique motivations, all of those things, unique places in which they engage with content and ways that they engage with content and information. And so I really do believe that if you start from that first principle of knowing your user, which is all about listening, empathy, research, spending time with them, and really putting yourself in their shoes, that you can create magical experiences that help them get the information they need to solve problems and make good decisions and be successful. So it kind of comes back to that really core driver that I had. And it may not take the form of a search advertisement. It may not take the form of any advertisement. It may take the form of a delightful interactive demo experience at an event, or a presentation where someone gets up on stage and says, I'm going to build an app from scratch here, and it may work and it may fail, but you're going to get to see how the sausage is made here. It may be just a really, really meaningful event experience that facilitates the connection of the right people together to have those deep conversations about how to solve problems. If those things are done elegantly, they won't feel like overt marketing, and yet they're being driven by foundational marketing principles.
I have a quick question. So the many of us we know as big companies like Apple and Google, they establish lots of things that we're talking about, including developer marketing, developer relations. And can you talk a little bit about your experience interacting with developer relations group? Because by my time when I was exploring some of the Google tools, it was during the time, so GWT framework, like early years of Android. There are a lot of things with the Google protocol buffers and all this stuff. I learned a lot of things from the great evangelist developer advocates from the Google. And you probably seen this, the teams, since you're interacting on these bigger events like Google I/O, like how those teams interacted in an ideal space. In my case, I guess I'm like a very naive, but in my experience, those bigger companies they've seen it all. So that's why you probably seen it all, and you can start from ideal experience of how it's interact with the developer relations and developer marketing.
Yeah, I'll do ideal, and then I am also a relatively open book, so I'm also more than happy to say when the ideal didn't happen.
Yes,
And
please, by all means.
the model that I use, and this is where there's that question of, is developer marketing, developer relations, developer marketing, are they distinct things that are, intersecting circles? I'm more of the school of thought of they are distinct functions within a larger umbrella, and that it's really important to have aligned goals, and yet to recognize that each side has unique skill sets that make the whole happen. And that's when I had those ideal interactions, whether was in various organizations at Google, during my time at Asana, during my time at Slack. It was when we came together and said, there is this objective that we all want to achieve together. What's the special sauce I bring to the table, and what's the special sauce that developer relations brings to the table? And those were the moments, because it was this shared vision and yet shared respect for one another, that both sides made the whole. And the mental model I use is distillation. And I was lucky enough to spend some time in Scotland, so good Scotch whiskey had some influence on me. And I think about whiskey distillation, which is to make that beautiful dram of whiskey. You need raw materials. You need that beautiful Highland water, the peat, the grains, everything like that, and then you need the system. And the way that I was able to really break through and build those strong relationships was to say, look, developer advocates, developer relations, you are those raw materials. We cannot have this marketing experience and engagement without you. You have those deep, deep relationships with the developers. You know the product, you're passionate about the product, and you have that empathy to really listen and understand and bring the feedback back to the product teams. What I can do, and I'm quoting one of my previous colleagues, is make sure you can move fast without getting fired, and that we can show the impact of what you're doing, and that we can show that there's scale. And we can do those things without causing friction with the experience of the person who's interacting with our content. And so explaining it that way, where I'm not trying to cause friction in you getting things done. I'm trying to make sure that from a business perspective, they see how valuable this is, and that without the work that you're doing, we're not able to make better product. We're not able to move things forward. And so it was really that mental model of distillation, that you can't have one without the other, that helped create the most positive working environments that I had. And it allowed us to accomplish the most.
Please note how Kathy refers to us as a noble whiskey and not as manure, as you refer to us constantly.
Yeah, fertilizer. I know. So my point is, I want to make a comeback that everyone will appreciate, because see what I'm doing. So the Katie mentioned the thing about magic, and is it fair to say, in your opinion, that DevRel, developer advocates, create this magic because they take the raw material and create something out of it, and you help to elevate and demonstrate the value of this, not only outside of the company where you can, amplify some of the things that they do, but also inside of the company, so the business understand the value that developer relations bring with their raw knowledge and raw passion that would be channeled into some valuable business metrics.
Absolutely, 100%. The experiences that I think about the most with that are a lot of the really magical interactive experiences that we have been able to showcase at events, because that's that moment where it's understanding a problem, understanding an audience and how they're going to want to interact and engage with something. And marketing, if we're being honest, we have the budget, we have the relationship with the agencies, we have that foundational program management, project management experience. And so when a developer advocate comes to us and says, I want to create a version of Pictionary that somebody can play, that they can understand the AI models that go into it and how this is something that they can easily replicate at their company. Or they want to highlight the power of how quickly our data centers work by sending a picture around the world around our data centers. It's like, okay, that's a great idea. And how are we going to build it? And that's something that can't necessarily be built by an agency alone. It can't be built by marketing alone. It can't be built by developer relations alone. But that's where it's knowing the user, knowing that they're going to find that quick experience incredibly delightful and powerful and showcase really how it's telling the story. They know the magic, they know the technology and really how to build the guts of it. And then connecting those two together is really that partnership.
So from the things you just saying, I'm trying to make the good view for our listeners. If developers listen for us, they need to understand that the marketing is not a bad thing. Without bad marketing is a bad thing, but without the good marketing, you don't know what you actually want. And with the help, it's same thing for developer relations specialists. Without having the good collaboration with the marketing leaders and marketing practitioners, your work also will be very niche thing. The people would be excited about your demos, but without this loud amplification that will include important part that included maybe travel budget, events budget, or like advertisement budget, you can be seen much wider audience, I would say, or something like this.
Absolutely. And bad marketing applies to everything. I know that this is a very US centric comment, but think about Super Bowl advertisements. That's really that peak canonical moment where there's dozens of high profile advertisements. And even there alone, I think about the number of times I'm like, I'm not really sure what they're trying to achieve there. That was a lot of money for a celebrity cameo that did not convince me to do XYZ. So I think you
So
see
much.
examples of that across the board. And it's just really, really highlighted for an audience where it's like, don't give me the gimmicks, cut through the BS. I don't have a lot of time. I have to do XYZ. I have to do it cheaply, securely, effectively. Like just give it to me. Show me what it is, how it works, how much it's going to cost, how much of my personal information you're going to need in order to get this to me.
Yeah.
Like and that's where if somebody's doing marketing right, regardless of the audience, if it's for me as a competitive runner, if it's for you as a software engineer, they should be taking very similar approaches and methodologies. And then what's different is the output. That what's different is what are the channels to use to reach these individuals? What is the tone and voice? Who is the message coming from? What's the try before you buy? And how is that similar or different from someone who's looking to purchase a new pair of running shoes or a new brand of makeup?
Okay, so here is a hot take. Developers are indeed very unique audience, and you need to come up with like channels and voice, etc. What you said, I'm not necessarily agree with this hot take, by the way, but anyway, current financial climate is so that you have a certain budget for things you have to think twice, especially if you are in a smaller company and you need to choose between like going to event and spend all this traveling money or whatever. So the idea of the hot take is if developers are so hard to convince, so hard to market, and they're not even necessarily the decision makers, why bother? Why should I do that at all? Like, okay, there are developer relations advocates who go and like talk about the product and they build the product, but why should I spend any time like trying to
What
target
other options do
my
you have, though?
I can
The
go
sell on the
to
golf fields.
industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go to industry like CEO VCs type of events and try to convince
But
them
but we already
from
know
top to
since the
bottom.
90s that that doesn't work. I mean, we don't need. We're way past that. The entire developer relations exist because we know that it doesn't work. I don't think that's a
Well,
option for
I distinguish
anyone.
between developer relations. I'm talking about developer marketing right now. I'm not talking about not having developer relations. I'm talking whether you as a marketer should like build something on top of developer relations or leave it alone and do your marketing separately.
So you had lots of hot takes in there, and I really
Yes,
like
right.
one is really when it's a lean organization, when it's a startup organization, what's the relationship between the developer relations function and the developer marketing function? And really that question of when is it time to have some programmatic overlay, some programmatic relationships, some marketing relationship. The second one, which is a hot take that I really like, which is where developers fit into the purchasing cycle. So I'm happy to take both of those.
Oh
Please
yeah.
do.
That first one, I think, is if I were advising a startup, I would really hold tight on that first marketing hire over a first advocacy hire, particularly if it's a developer first company. And particularly because whether advocates like it or not, the advocacy is a form of marketing to developers. And so you really do have that covered. Where some of the marketing polish can come in are things like frameworks, processes, documentation, and so forth, where as they're going out and doing that fail fast, move fast experimentation, that type of information and insight isn't getting lost. And yet at the same time, looking at the global network of developer relations and developer marketing leads, which is relatively small and relatively connected, I feel like there are enough folks who have done time on both sides that your first developer relations hire can be someone who fundamentally understands marketing best practices. For example, making sure talking points are consistent and brand is presented consistently, making sure that there's a trip report at the end, making sure that if there's an event and there's an option for lead capture, that lead capture happens so that you can get that information and put it into the marketing funnel and things like that. And you don't need a full-time marketing hire for that if that first developer advocacy hire is really strong and understands those foundational business principles. Where marketing comes in is where all of a sudden you have that next incremental budget and you have an opportunity to sponsor the blog post, sponsor the podcast. And they really become the bridge and conduit between the business functions and the engineering and advocacy functions to make sure the T's are crossed and I's are dotted so that activities aren't happening in a vacuum. So that's kind of how I would answer that first one. For the second one, data from things like the Stack Overflow survey suggests that more and more, even if developers aren't the decision makers, that particularly at younger, with companies that have, I'm trying to find the right way to phrase this, a more modern approach to how they operate, that it isn't kind of the CIO or CTO over here who's kind of making all of the decisions and just implementing them top down, but where you have flatter organizational structures, where there's more influence up and down on decisions. Organizations like that, developers do tend to have influence with the purchasers. And so there's almost two prongs of marketing, which is when you're reaching those developers, and this also thankfully is a way to offer scale as well. If you're in touch with the communities that those developers are part of and you're present in those communities, that's a really good opportunity to get feedback, to plant the seeds and so forth. So, it's that famous Twilio billboard as you're driving into San Francisco, which is ask your developer. And I think that there's really something to be said about that, because ultimately, if companies are being really judicious about their budget, they don't want to push something top down to devs that devs are going to reject because there's going to have low adoption, low uptick, and then they're going to have spent money on something that isn't actually solving the problem. And that's actually less of a technical problem and more of a people problem, which is people are averse to change. They like to feel like they've had a say and power in the change that's happening to them. And so if you want change to be sticky, it helps to have the buy-in from the people who are going to experience the change.
This is a very good point, and I
This
think
is brilliant. Yep.
yeah, this is something that's changing a lot for the. So that's why we have this growing industry. I still believe I'm at this point I'm usually skeptical, but in this point I'm more with the Baruch, very optimistic about the growth because in the last couple of years we've seen lots of kind of exodus. I'm not calling it like exodus. It's like lots of people start leaving the jobs of DevRel and returning to engineering or going into the product roles or going to the marketing roles. I wanted to talk a little bit about like also hiring. You also mentioned this. Like, what would be better for the company to hire developer, marketer, or grew internally? Like someone like you joined the Google to be the consultant on the ads and working on the front lines, and after that you grew into into this role and become the marketer. What would you recommend kind of like companies to look? Since you mentioned hiring, you're saying that okay, so probably don't hire developer marketing first, hire the advocates if you on the side of selling. Do you think it's possible to someone decide to go this route and become this type of person, or we just need to go and find the professional?
Oh, that's a good one. There's the way I
Loaded
want
one.
to answer it. There's the way I want to answer it, and then there's the reality of I think where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I want to answer it, and this is whether it's internal within a company or just somebody having experiences with one company and parlaying it into developer relations in another. To me, what makes developer relations special, or developer marketing special for that matter, is it's not one thing. I like to call it the liberal arts of the engineering profession, in that it's not hands-on keyboard, but it is. It's not education, but it is. It's not marketing, but it is. And I think it's a really interesting and unique space for someone who is deeply passionate about technology, who's deeply passionate about making sure companies build good products for this particular audience. And even if they're not overtly extroverted, that they are comfortable engaging in building those relationships. I mean, there's a reason relations is part of it, because it's really bi-directional trust. And you're absolutely right. Growing within a company, and I saw a lot of that movement and mobility when I was at Google, where folks would move from product management into developer relations. They would move from program management. They would move from sales and customer engineering. So there was a lot of movement back and forth. And it was this great way for folks who had these really varied skill sets to exercise all of those skill sets in a unique way. The reason why there's the ideal versus the reality is, I think, what I've seen over the last couple of years with kind of the contraction of organizations is there isn't as much internal mobility as there historically has been. And when there are open roles, people are hiring very specifically for specialists. I have my own opinions about that, but I'm not in a hiring, I'm not in a position right now. So all I can do is share my perspective. But
Yeah, that would be great to learn about this, because like we all have some opinions about this, and like I also get the reason why I'm asking this. I'm get confused many times because I've seen different people doing great jobs, and after that they get very not upset, but at least they get very confused also maybe, and very upset about when someone is just hiring from someone outside who maybe don't have a history with the company, they who have been in the like beginning of the things and may not understand the history, and that's why it creates kind of like turnaround in the companies. People feel that okay, so I was spent so many years in this particular role, now they hire someone that haven't been here for a long time, and now like am I still appreciated in this company? Do I need to continue to invest this? So this is the reason why the question. So I would happy to hear your perspective about this type of issue, if it makes sense.
that is something that transcends developer relations and developer marketing, although it may be even more poignant for these functions because they are such a unique hybrid of skill sets. In my perspective, there really is value in understanding a company's culture, how they
Yeah.
make product. Are they a product centric company, a customer centric company, a sales centric company? There really is that historical knowledge. If I could wave a magic wand, I really believe if companies are investing in growing individuals and retaining those individuals and being productive and having that, employee loyalty and so forth, that would be the approach that I would love to see taken more than not, is where is the internal talent that you can grow?
This is where we end the first part. As you can stay tuned for the next episode. We will find the spot where it would be like a very like a cliffhanger worthy place. So Ollie, wrap up our first episode.
With that, we will leave you here and move to the second part. Stay tuned.
Don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications on our YouTube channel so you will not miss any new episodes.
Especially the new episode with Katie Miller that is coming right up.